We've been very lucky in the Haven, you see. Stephen Conley and Byddi Lee, Marty Mack and Kathy C. Such brilliant diversity. Disgruntled Mumbles and Folkadelic. Sarah Jane with Ryan too. There's more yet to come. We've had Ludwig O'Neill and Chris Chalmers, Carol Devlin and Grim 17. I can tell you, they ain't no bums. And it doesn't stop there with John Andrews, Zach Mack, Juma Vibes and Taylor Lally. And so many more are on the way. So we appreciate you following. And that's all I have to say. So at the minute, I don't have a name for that, but I wrote that yesterday actually, because I'd realised that we've actually had 16 guests on the show. We're taking a wee break after tonight for a couple of weeks. So it was just a wee poem as a summary of what we've been through and what's to come. We've still got 2 or 3 dates open up till Christmas, but apart from that, we're fully booked if anybody's interested. But anyway, enough of the waffle. Welcome to Acoustic Haven, which I should have said at the beginning, but never mind. And our guest tonight is somebody that we are delighted to have back. She has been zooming all over Ireland. She's taken the book arena by storm, selling out her book launches all across the northern part of Ireland. We welcome Byddi Lee. So welcome, Byddi. Second time here, first artist to do so.
It's great.
And
Thank you.
I put on a really nice new T-shirt, and me and Dan went for a curry, and it's black. So I did make an effort. I did promise you some new clothes, and I did have new clothes on, but they're manky.
Well, in
My
fairness,
apologies.
you said new togs.
I did say new
worried.
togs. And me and Darren had a plan. I was going to come out of there in swimming trunks just to skate, but Darren said, no, you'll scale 11.
Well, if it hadn't been so hot, I'd have worn my big dry robe and you know, that on, you know, had the togs under.
So brilliant, man. Mm-hmm. So firstly, we'll talk about how successful Barren has been.
It's done well. It's been doing well, yeah.
It's been fantastic. Mm-hmm. I read the review in the Sunday Independent.
Yeah, it was great. I was grinning all day, all week, yeah.
It was a great review, in fairness. Yeah. Absolutely fantastic. And then, of course, the book itself was just amazing. Took me 2 days to read. Just absolutely fantastic, very gripping. It was one of those books that I found that I felt I shouldn't be there. I shouldn't be reading it because it was that personal.
You're right. Yeah.
Well, that's the way I thought it was written. I just felt, this is too personal, man. I feel like I was in my granny's bedroom stealing the chocolates at Christmas at the Quality Street tin, you know.
That was also because you were a man. Do you think that it's a very female gaze in the
Definitely,
book?
aye. There was part of that, but a lot of it just felt like, oh, this is way too personal. I should not be reading this. And as I said, I did have that image of me being in my granny's bedroom, you know, stealing sweeties at the Quality Street.
But isn't that what writing's supposed to be for?
That's it,
you know, isn't it? You're supposed to be like looking behind the doors and pulling the curtain back and having a glimpse. And
yeah.
I think that's good. That makes me feel like I've achieved something with that, you know.
But you've definitely achieved something. I mean, the book it's a great book. Since I last saw you, I think within a period of a month, I read your other 4 books as well. Rejuvenation.
I think you're my best fan.
Rejuvenation 1 to 3 are fantastic. I loved them. And March to November was actually my favourite, I think. Probably because it's just written about now.
Yeah.
Well, 15, 20 years ago, but it's certainly now as well, you know.
Yeah. It's supposed to be ageless, but is a book
I think it
really
is.
Ageless? It's hard to...
No, I think it is. And I loved, as I say, Rejuvenation, and the bit where the niece has it off with her granny's best mate, you know, that I don't know what goes on in your head, missus. I thought I was bad, you know.
I thought it was bad enough that the main character's ex-boyfriend was having it off with her granny.
Well, there was that as well, you know. So, but anyway, And just going back to Barren, Can Indie Award, is that right? Is it Can? What's it called, the Indie Award you've been up for?
Oh, the Indie Award. Yes, it's the Carousel Aware Prize.
Carousel,
So
sorry.
yeah, it's the Carousel Aware is a charity for
Right.
mental health awareness.
Okay.
And so all the and it's the actual prizes for independent authors, and your submission fees all go to the charity.
Right.
So
Oh,
there's
fantastic.
the readers don't take fees. There's no, it's not like it's a big prize win or
Yeah,
whatever.
yeah.
It's all the money is to raise money for. So I like the concept of it, that it's for something good as well. It's not just us all patting ourselves on the back. So yeah, I got longlisted for that. First time I've ever been longlisted.
I think that's brilliant.
So well, actually, when I say first time I've been longlisted, I had a short story in the anthology that won in that same prize last year.
Yeah.
in the anthologies section. There was like 36 people in the anthology, so I don't really feel like I did it by myself at all. Whereas this is mine, so I was very pleased.
But the anthology was. Why did that not win?
The anthology.
Are you I'm talking
no.
about. Oh,
Oh,
sorry.
you're thinking of the trilogy.
Yes,
No.
sorry.
The anthology
Sorry.
is a collection. So the anthology is called North Star.
All right,
and
okay.
It was it came about during lockdown.
Right.
And Angeline King, who is also an indie author, she we were in an organisation an online group called Women Allowed NI.
Right.
My mum used to think it was in Girls Allowed. It was quite sweet. But it was Women Allowed NI, and it was really about promoting women writers.
Yeah.
And so what she did was, like we're in lockdown, let's gather up some stories, let's put together a publication.
All right, okay.
And so they entered that publication. There was an independent publisher that sort of coordinated all of this, and then he entered it into the CAP Awards
I see.
last year.
Yeah.
And that's how I became aware of them. And then we went down to Dublin. We got longlisted, shortlisted, and then we went down for the prize giving. And they hadn't told us that we had won, so we assumed we hadn't won because we assumed that the winners all knew that they had won.
Yeah.
So it was a really big surprise.
Oh, so you did win then, huh?
We won last year, yeah. So we won it. That was last. I think that was the start of November, and then whenever they opened it again this year, I thought, you know what, even if it doesn't get anywhere, I know that the entry fee has gone to a really good cause.
Right.
So, it sort of it takes the sting out of just throwing the money away, if you don't get anywhere. So so that was it.
So you're red hot favourite then?
Fingers are all crossed. But you know what, it feels like a win already, so I'm happy with that.
And then you have Flash Fiction coming up.
Yeah, we have Flash Fiction coming up on the 5th of September, and so what we're open now for submissions until the 4th of August. We try to get everything sort of turned around to give people that we select a time to get their act together, basically. But we do say to people when they're submitting, like, submit knowing that you will be required to come on the 4th of September and read out your own work, so that kind of sometimes puts people off.
Right.
But it's a really nice night. It's a really fun night.
And do you pick people to come, or do they submit the piece?
So they submit the piece.
Yeah.
And then there's two of us who read the pieces, and we select the combination of pieces that work best on the night.
Right. Okay.
So we don't know what we're looking for until we sort of see what's come in. There was, like, for example, one year we had like 3, it was just random, 3 stories about buses.
All right, okay.
And so we were like, do we go with a bus theme or do we just pick one of the bus stories? So we went with just one of the bus stories. We tried to have a combination of sort of established writers who have read at Flash Fiction before, because we like to be sort of like, keeping them with us. But we also like to hear from new voices, and we want to give new writers a platform and an opportunity. And so for example, Kathy Carson read our first Flash Fiction, and Kathy was so nervous that night that she learned her piece off by heart because her hands were shaking so much she couldn't hardly read the pages, and that's kind of where she started memorizing her stuff and performing it. So we're very proud of that. We sort of feel that we found her. We didn't actually. We weren't the first place that she had read, but we love her, so we're claiming her.
That's brilliant. Good claim to have. She's fantastic.
She's brilliant, and like it's what we do as well is we video all the if people permit it. Like you don't have to. Like, because some people are like, oh, don't want to be videoed, so we don't do that. But for those who want to be videoed, we put it up and we have it on the website. And I think it's nice then for people it's on YouTube and they can share it or put it up. And it's all about promoting themselves as a writer. But also we pay a very small stipend. It's not a lot of money. It wouldn't even pay for a night in Armagh. It would hardly cover the transport from Belfast, but it also then gives authors or writers the opportunity to sort of tick that box and say, I've been paid for my writing. And I know for me, the first time I got paid for something I'd written, it was like somebody has paid me for words that were inside my brain.
Yeah.
And that just felt so good.
I was the same when I got paid. There's Stephen round the corner when the Foggy Brew was open.
Yeah.
He was the first guy that paid me, and then I did Liverpool last year and I was meant to do it this weekend, but it was cancelled.
Oh.
But just getting paid, it wouldn't matter. You're happy to do it for nothing, but the fact that somebody's willing to give you
it's about
20,
value.
30 quid or whatever,
it's value.
Yeah, that's what it is,
it's
definitely.
Value, yeah.
So, and then now do you think, what will be after that? Are you going to take a well-earned rest or are you going to keep going?
Well, at the start of September, we sort of started last week with just some pre-rehearsals, I suppose you would call it, but we've rehearsals coming up then for Toxic Relationships, which is my crazy play about climate change. And that's on in Armagh on the 31st of October and the 1st of November. And it was on last year, but in a much smaller venue. So now we have a bigger venue to fill. It's a little bit scarier, but it's also a bigger production. I've added a few more scenes under the guidance of the producer. She's brilliant. So she kind of comes and says, this is what I think it needs. And then I'll write it and then we'll rehearse it a wee bit. And then she'll come back and go, maybe take that line out and put that line in, or we need to, why is there dinosaurs in it? Literally that was a question. So there are dinosaurs in it, big inflatable T-Rexes. So and it's about the fact that we're in the 6th extinction event.
Yeah,
and we are probably at the stage where there's no going back.
Yeah,
we're there, and
we have the tools to use it, but the problem is we don't have the people.
Don't have the will.
Yeah, we don't have the will, and we don't have the people that can do something about it, want to do something about it.
I think at the minute I'm going through, they talk about the stages of grief. And I think that we'll all go through a grieving process for the word that we were used to.
Yeah.
And I'm at that stage of anger. I'm incredibly angry at our governments across the board.
Yeah.
I think that most people, had they been given more incentive, for want of a better word, either financial or just guidance wise, I think we would have made better choices as individuals. But that's only half of the problem. We, industry, and then of course the lies that were told to us by Big Oil. Getting very political here. You might have to do a BBC on this and cut bits out. But
no BBC here.
But Big Oil have definitely, it's been proven that they told lies.
Yeah.
As far back as the 1960s or 70s.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah.
And we deal with all this in the play. But we have a character called Big Oil, and it's a personification of all these different, elements that have contributed to where we are now. And they put them on trial in the play.
Okay.
Earth and the Moon have this conversation, and the Moon's kind of saying to Earth, come on, these humans are, they're wrecking you, and the Earth's more like the Irish mommy. It says, no, they're all right. They're not too bad. They're good at heart, they don't mean it. But so that's kind of where it starts.
Right, okay. Brilliant. So, apart from the personal touch and the thing about what the story's actually about, I don't want to say too much.
I have a wee spiel I can give anyway.
But Barren itself does have that global warming theme through it, as does rejuvenation. And they're really strong in their message. So that's obviously something you feel really very important.
Yeah. So the way it is, Barren has 2 timelines.
Yes.
And the modern timeline, I've only really recently realised this is what it is. The modern timeline is a story about a woman who's going through infertility, set against the backdrop of climate change.
Yeah.
And the ancient timeline, which is set 4,000 years ago, is a story about a woman going through an actual climate change that we have on record, scientific record, that happened here 4,000 years ago as a result of volcanic eruptions in Iceland. And the woman is going, it was catastrophic to the island of Ireland. So that woman is going through that, and her backdrop is infertility.
Yeah.
So it's kind of switched around, but each theme is echoed in the other's timeline.
Yeah.
And I think that's kind of what knits it together then, you know. Okay, so we were talking about climate change, and the climate change that happened in 2354 BC, roughly 4,000 years ago, happened because of a volcanic eruption, and it made the northern hemisphere colder and wetter, so the crops failed, nothing grew for 9 years. And so this is still the first year. They've come through a summer where there are no crops to harvest, and a really lean winter. And this is Zosime in 2354 BC. My bones are cold. I can feel them ridged down my chest to where my skin scoops into my stomach and stretches between my hips. It has been a hard winter. Rivers froze, fish died, we lost the pig herd. The crops failed. The cattle grow thinner. Our elder Aeon departed for the stars. It was sad. It was his time. But this winter, more of our people, especially those weakened by age or illness, died than is usual. There have been no more dust falls. Snow lies deep, but as the daylight lengthens, hope stirs. Spring will follow soon. The ceremonial hall is a welcome refuge after spending the morning outside in the biting cold. I stamp the snow off my boots and clamp my fur-lined mitts under my armpits to slide my stiff hands out as I enter the heat of the hall. To keep warm, elders, children and villagers who can bring their work with them or whose work is impossible due to the weather spend their days here. The air is damp, heavy with the fug of many bodies, wood smoke and the smell of the almost empty cooking pot. There's a dip in the chatter and bustle as everyone turns towards the door. I hold up my bulging hunting sack, and there's an added buzz as people voice approval. I have succeeded in visiting my traps and can provide for the communal pot from a young buck. It was smaller than I would have liked. I was surprised it got ensnared in the first place, but I could tell from its scrawniness that it had little energy to free itself. Still, it's better than nothing, and we badly need the meat to supplement the watery soup we've been relying on. It will reassure Nearest when I tell him I am entitled to a larger share. My heart speeds up at the thought I've not bled for 2 cycles. So I had explained that that was Zosime's timeline. The ancient timeline is a climate change story set against the backdrop of her infertility journey. But the modern timeline is narrated by Poppy, who is the spirit of the miscarried baby, and she tells her mother's story of infertility, and it is set against our current climate change. So I just thought I'd read a wee bit about that, and this is Poppy's voice, and this is before she connects. She actually does break through from the other side and does talk to her mum, but this is before that happens. We don't come from nowhere, nor do we vanish into nothing. I always knew 3 things. I was wanted, in bright shades of flashing yellow, desperately wanted. I was loved, in vibrant shades of swirling pinks and reds, unconditionally loved. And I'd never be forgotten, in shimmering waves of silver, always remembered. My mother mourns me. She nurses me along with her other bereavements, placing her hopes for me alongside the cherished memories of her father and her friend Kate. I know my mother's thoughts, but I'm fortunate not to be as enmeshed with her emotions as I was while a part of her. But now I watch and listen, an observer safe from her pain on this side of the veil. She has kept the pregnancy test, and even 6 weeks after losing my physical form, she sits on the side of her bed for prolonged periods, staring at the blue line. It reassures her that she had me with her for those exquisite 8 weeks when her little poppy seed had grown somewhere between a kidney bean and a grape. Her mind replays the day that she came back from the doctor's office. My father had decided to work from home, the next best thing to a day off from his job in Lick Observatory. If it wasn't for a conference call, he'd have gone with her to get the doctor's confirmation. She had been happy to go on her own, but wished that her mother or Kate could have been a part of this moment in some way. When the doctor said congratulations, she couldn't contain her joy and surprised the man with a bear hug. My mother drove the short journey home with her heart bursting. As she pulled the car into the drive, my father ran out of the house to meet her. She opened the car door and they locked eyes, his brimming with the question, begging to put out of the agony of waiting. A dip of her head and her slow smile spread joy to his face, a look she would never forget. He scooped her up in his arms. Their souls had entwined, reached out and touched the bliss we feel on this side of the veil. I know that both my parents mourned the miscarriage in their own way. In the immediate aftermath, they had helped each other through. When one was up, the other was down. But it was hard when both were down together. They struggled on, hoping their grief would pass and that they'd see the world in a different light in the days that followed. Bitterness crept up on my mother. It was as though motherhood was some sort of club that she couldn't join, even though she'd filled out all the forms and had completed the initiation. It wasn't fair. She hadn't done anything wrong.
Fantastic.
Thank you.
So that was brilliant. Absolutely fantastic. How do you research something like Barren and rejuvenation? I mean, is rejuvenation like your head just goes and off you go, or
Yeah, it's kind of like you just end up having lists and lists and lists of questions, So in the world building, you want to you sort of see it in your head,
yeah,
and then if there's gaps, you want to know how do you fill in those gaps. So that's sort of one of the ways. So with rejuvenation, because it's near future, like a near future,
yeah,
it's not that much more different. Like we had the big skyscrapers and we had the flying cars, but they have flying cars now.
yeah,
They're too expensive and they're not
yeah,
probably tested. And they have self-driving cars now, and they had back whenever I was writing rejuvenation. So it was really just about mainstreaming all that,
right.
So some of the how they used their communication thing, their ONEVE, I had to revamp that. So I had an idea of how I thought it worked. And then I ran it past somebody who worked for one of the Silicon Valley. I was living out in California at the time.
Yeah.
And this guy worked with this kind of ocular, like Google glasses and all that. And he was basically saying my thing wasn't going to work the way I had envisaged it.
Yeah.
So back to the drawing board, and he sort of gave me some ideas on how it would work. And it ended up, it was like an implant. I thought it was going to be something on the cornea. But then the focal length is wrong in the eye and it wasn't going to work. So it was just an implant right into the nerve, and that's how I got around it.
Yeah.
But I wanted the science to be kind of doable, like at some point that you could actually do it. So that's what I wanted. But for Barren, the research was completely sort of opposite or different in that it was going back in history.
Yeah.
And because the modern timeline that didn't require much research.
Yeah.
But the back in history, it was a lot of phone calls to archaeologists. Greer Ramsay at the museum,
Right.
He helped the Sean Barden down in the museum in Armagh. He was brilliant. Just even and again answering questions like if you found a bronze axe in your garden, like do you have to report it to the authorities? Does somebody take it off you? At the time that I was writing, I think some of this is changing, but north of the border, you didn't.
Yeah.
But south of the border,
You did.
you do. So my editor was like, "On, you can't, or one of the mentors that I think it was actually Connor Costick who brought this up. He said, no, I think you have to, he's a historian and he knew this, but then I was able to come back with, well, Sean Barden says,
Yeah.
north of the border, it's different. So there's all those wee nuances, you
Right.
know.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
And also the same with March to November. Was that just about your kind of
It was
period as a student? Or,
yeah. It was. There wasn't much research in March to November. Really, it was all just patched together from my life, experiences, and the characters were a mosaic of other people that I knew, and so that March to November didn't require that much research.
Right. Okay. It just amazes me how you brought 243 BC. At first I was like, that's such a random figure.
Yeah.
But as you read the book, it's kind of it makes more sense the more you read.
Yeah.
But at first it was like 243 BC. Why 243?
Yeah. Yeah.
And that was the one thing that I was impressed with the amount of research you must have had to do for rejuvenation as well, because there's a lot of medical terms at the beginning.
Oh, that was hard.
The first book.
Yeah, that was tough, and I had a doctor help me with that.
Yeah.
Actually. So yeah, the medical stuff in rejuvenation was hard. Even just the fact that the protagonist in rejuvenation was a really smart person.
Yeah.
You have to be smarter than your protagonist. So I'm going to start writing dumb protagonists because it's really hard. It's just like
that's what I did.
I'm exhausted. But with Barren as well. Some of the research I sort of cheated a wee bit because some of the research I had done back in the 90s myself.
Yeah.
With the tree rings, I had actually worked on the tree ring chronology that Mike Bailey talks about.
Okay.
And that's how I know Mike, because he was my professor. So I was in the department, and I had actually gone to the museum and heard him give that talk.
Yeah.
That it's in the book at near the end, and unfortunately, poor Mike, he didn't live to see the book published. He died last November.
All right.
So that was sad. But I love the idea that his name's in this. And, you don't die if there's stories being told. That's a big thing in this book, is as long as there's stories being told about you, you're not dead.
Yeah.
You're not dead yet. So that was nice.
And then, so when you're writing, and because of the amount of research that goes into the books, when do you decide that, right, okay, I'm going to write
this bit?
Well, if we say rejuvenation, for instance, I'm going to write 3 books, or was it, I'm going to write one, this is getting a bit long, so I'll cut it, and I'll write 2, and then I'll write 3, or...
No, rejuvenation was always going to be a trilogy.
All right, okay.
And I was inspired by have you ever watched Wayward Pines?
No.
Blake Crouch. Oh, you'd love Blake Crouch.
Right, okay.
Yeah. So Blake Crouch, Wayward Pines is a TV series as well. There's 3 seasons in it, or is it just the one? I think it's the one series, but you find out at the end. Anyway, it has a finite end.
Right.
So the end, kind of explains the rest of it.
Yeah.
And then the same with rejuvenation. So I wanted to have something where that happened as well.
Right.
And so I started off watching Wayward Pines on TV, and then I went and read Wayward Pines, and then I read everything that Blake Crouch has ever written, and that was fabulous. Like it's very addictive. So yeah, that's kind of, I knew it was going to be, and then you have a story arc for a novel.
Yeah.
So you kind of imagine, if you imagine as an arc, you have a story arc for the entire trilogy, and you have an arc within each book as well.
Right.
And you have to, I'm quite visual, so I was lining up the midpoint of the second book had to be the midpoint. So if you analyze it, you would be able to pick that apart and go, the midpoint, the big thing, the point of no return in the second book is actually, the midpoint.
Yeah.
Or I think maybe even the climax in the second book could be your point of no return. So you pick your, you pick your points, and you pick your story arcs and all that, and then you're able to extrapolate that over 3.
But then you have to live in such a kind of for the next few years, you have to live in their heads.
You
and
have to live in that world.
You dream it, you sleep it, you
talk about it.
Yeah.
It's all your, it is engrossing. But yeah, I'm not doing it again. I'm not doing
But
it.
it must have been the same with Barren, though. Would it not have been the same sort of timeline? Because the amount of research in Barren is just unbelievable,
it took,
you know?
Like, to write, so March and November took me 6 years to write.
Yeah.
Because I had to learn the craft of writing during that time as well.
Yeah.
So it took 6 years to write. Rejuvenation Book 1 took 3 years to write. Book 2 took 2 years. And I knocked out Book 3 in a year.
Yeah.
Because I knew the characters so well. I knew the ending.
Yeah.
Right from the start. So I was always working towards that.
Right.
So that was, and then Barren took 3 years to write. So I'm kind of getting it down to one book being, a book on its own being about 3 years. Now, bear in mind that in that 3 year period, I also wrote 2 plays.
Aye, well,
I co-wrote a play and then wrote a play all by myself. So there was other things. But then in saying that, when I was writing Rejuvenation, life was getting in the way too. I was moving between California and Paris, and then from Paris to here.
Yeah.
So big changes, and like when we were packing up the house, I don't think I got much writing done then.
Yeah.
So you sort of put things on hold. So so yeah, I don't know. I mean, if I always used to say, if I got an agent and I was writing, for a big publisher or whatever, and I knew the book was definitely getting like a big send off and all that.
Sorry.
I would.
Keep going. I'm sorry. I'm really sorry.
Nobody
texts me or phones me during the week. As soon as a Tuesday comes when they know I'm doing something, ping, ping.
That's life. That's
ping.
life. That's the word.
Anyway, sorry.
You're all right.
About that.
Let's bring on Oni. If you had Oni, that wouldn't happen. You'd just be getting the messages.
Well, that's true. In the brain.
Yeah. So that's basically where we're at with the research thing. It takes.
And what made you decide then I'm going to be a writer? What was the moment that you just?
So, I think.
Or did you always want it to be?
I must have always wanted it somewhere. But I think the actual moment was when we were deciding to move to California.
Right. Okay.
And I knew I would be giving up teaching.
Right.
Not giving up teaching, but I was giving up teaching in Rathmore here.
Yes.
And I wasn't going to be able to teach right away in America because I would have had to retrain. Wasn't that keen to do that anyway, because you'd have to start at the bottom of the ladder and work your way up,
Yeah.
So I just wasn't that keen to do that. So I suppose at that point in my life, I was thinking, what am I going to do? Like, I'm too young to retire.
Yeah.
Because I was 38 or 39 at the time. So it was like, right, what am I going to do? And I had started writing March, November when I came home from school.
Right.
And in between making the dinner, home from school and making the dinner, that's sort of 4 o'clock to 6 o'clock.
All right, okay.
Probably should have been cleaning the house and doing a whole lot of other things, but no, I sat down and started writing. So that was when it started. But then the moment that I called myself a writer, I wrote a short story about my father dying. I was with him when he died, and it was in a hospice, and it was a very privileged moment in life. And it was such an honor to be with him as he passed out of this world. And I wrote a short story about it, and it got published in the Ireland Zone. So I thought, okay, well, they give me money for that.
Fantastic.
So that was that moment. So that's that thing about paying.
Yeah.
That was the moment I thought, I can call myself a writer now.
That's brilliant.
So didn't get anything published for ages afterwards, but it was a good wee kickstart,
And finally, so what's next as far as the next book? So
what I've decided is I need a palate cleanser. I feel like I don't want to do anything necessarily the exact same. I don't want to. I want something new to write about because I need to be interested in it.
Yeah.
And so I've promised myself that I am not going to worry about writing until January 26th.
Okay.
But already, like, things are sort of like coming in and going, what about this for an idea? What about that? So I'm never short on ideas, but it's more about what's going to be something that's going to hold me for 3 years. Or maybe, hopefully I'll be quicker, and write faster and all that, Well, so I have nothing crystallized yet.
Yeah.
But it's all brewing.
I find when it comes into your head, you have to write it down straight off. But I'm a different kind of writer than you.
Yeah.
I don't research. I
I
just write.
ferment it. Yeah, I let it like juggle around. And
If I don't know about it, I don't write.
Yeah.
If I know about it, then I can write about it
Yeah.
because I feel quite confident, you know. But if I don't, that's why I read so many crime books, and then I get information
from that.
from those kind of things, you know, and then I store it, and then when I write, it's just
Yeah.
off it goes,
Yeah. Yeah.
and it's done.
I quite like that. You know, people talk about going on a writing retreat.
Yeah,
And the idea of being stuck in a wee cottage in the west of Kerry for a week on my own horrifies me.
I'd
I
love to
couldn't
do
it.
that.
You see, yeah, totally.
I'd love to
I
do
need I need to chop and change. I need to have some time for researching, and then some time for just creating,
Yeah.
and then some time for eating my dinner and walking and talking to people. And I couldn't do that. You know those retreats where everybody goes together,
Yeah,
and then they all go off. No,
I don't get that.
I'd be the one in the common room just annoying the shit out of everybody. They'd be like, "But that woman never shuts up." You know?
Yeah, no, I
So
would
that
be
would
the
be
same.
me too.
That
Yeah.
wouldn't.
So I couldn't do that either.
Well, I think I'm out of questions.
Questions.
And
Thank you so much for having me back.
it's
and
been fantastic,
it's just
absolutely
and
brilliant
and
as
just
always.
watching all the other guests you've had on has been a pure joy. I mean, I just love I always keep it and bookmark it and come back to them, and yeah, it's been lovely.
We've been really lucky.
Yeah,
we have been so lucky. And that's why I wrote that wee poem. I just thought, get the people that's performed and one or two that are coming in.
Yeah.
From August the 5th, we're back. So, aye, that's fantastic. Thank you so much.
You're very welcome.
We'll get you in the next term. Another brilliant show. 17 weeks we've been going now, and we've had 17 fantastic shows. Thanks to Byddi tonight. She was absolutely amazing. And thanks to all the artists that have been on up to our halfway point, if you like. We're off air for the next 3 weeks. So firstly, I'd like to thank Ink Haven for sponsorship. I'd like to thank Darren Livingston, as always, for whatever it is he does now, editing and sound. And once again, Byddi, and from me and all at Acoustic Haven, thanks for watching for the first 17 weeks. See you back on August the 5th. Thank you.
How you sense of humour here, especially during the Troubles and that. And through all my travels, I always thought that the crack here and the sense of humour here was second to none. It was the best thing ever. And then I was saying that I was doing I was a master gardener back in California, and we were sitting around a table, and a lot of the people were older than me. I was in my 40s, but a lot of people are how old I am now probably. But and they were sitting around chatting, and we old ladies, and they were talking about one's husband had osteoarthritis and something wrong with his thumb, and she said, like, just one day his thumb just like broke off, and another wee lady was like, well, it just came right off, and she was like, well, no, I mean, it was still stuck on, you know, with the skin and all. And they were all going, oh my God, and where was he? And he was up this mountain, and he was driving a stick shift, and the ladies were like, oh my God, how did he get home? And I went, well, he didn't hitchhike. And that was.
And nobody else laughed.
And it all just went quiet. It was like a tumbleweed moment. And I was like, uh-oh, they're going to kick me out of Master Gardeners.